Hey, what's going on, good people? It's your boy James Harris, of course, Mental Heal. Listen, I appreciate all the support over the years, whether it was for my book, man, Just Express Yourself, which is an interactive planning guide for boys and men to better express themselves. So salute to those parents who got it for their young sons. Praises to those partners and couples who got it for the men in their life. Of course, to the schools, the administrative, and everybody else who ordering the book by the dozens. I definitely appreciate that. And also salute to everybody who supported me on Cheesy Date Board Games, which is a good game for adults and couples, your game night, your date night. So many interactive ideas come from it. I definitely love the responses that it's garnering. But now I'm asking for your support again on this YouTube journey. I'm back. I took a little break because I had so much going on, but be a little bit more consistent with it. I got a couple of interviews lined up with prominent people and people doing phenomenal things within the community or within this mental health space or even different authors and things like that. So bear with me. Appreciate your support. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And the guest that I got coming up now is
My name is Dr. Hollee Freeman, and I am a certified apprentice beekeeper for the state of Virginia. And I have an organization called City Bees under my company, Freeman Education and Business Consulting. And so, under the City Bees um, part of the organization, I take groups to my apiaries, which are bee yards. I provide workshops for students and adults. Um, and I have a few books that I've written about bees and beekeeping, and I made a film about being a Black woman beekeeper.
That's awesome. That's a lot of information. Like, how long have you been into the beekeeping space?
This is my 8th year as a beekeeper, and the way I got into it was I've always been involved in nature and just really focused on the world around us. And I wanted to have bees or honeybees at my last job, and folks weren't really into it. They're like, oh, the kids are going to be allergic and it's going to be a mess and it's not doable. And I just kind of put it on the back burner. And then I was going to write a book about one of my friends who is a Black woman farmer. And I was like, wow, like when do you see young Black women farming these days? And I just thought that was, it just reminded me of my grandmother and kind of growing up on a farm. So I went to interview her, and that was Nakaya Ellis Chavis. And so I went to talk to her about farming, and I noticed that she had these white boxes at the corner of the mini farm. And I was like, yeah, what's that? And she told me it were honeybees. She was a beekeeper. And from that moment on, I apprenticed with her for a year, and I got into it that way. So Kaya led me into the beekeeping that first year. And just started learning more and more and more, and then training other people to get into beekeeping.
So, silly question. Are bees really, one, going extinct, like you see in the media and the news? And two, are they really that important to society? Because I think I seen a follow-up report to the bee extinction is it'll collapse like civilization because they do so much. Is that true?
Totally true. So first of all, there's like 20,000 different kinds of bees in the US, and not never mind like, Africa and Japan and all the places. So I am focused primarily on honeybees, although there are many other types of bees. So honeybees are the apex pollinator, if you will. Like, dragonflies pollinate butterflies, ants, um, all beetles. Like, there are a lot of pollinators, but honeybees tend to be the most efficient pollinators. And so we need them for our food. So people don't realize that like strawberries grow because of a strawberry flower, or grows, or squash because they have the flowers. And the flowers need to get pollinated for the seed to produce. And so if the bees weren't pollinating our food supply, we wouldn't have any food. And so records show that bees pollinate about 75 to 85% of our food. So, your watermelon, your cucumber, many of the things that we eat are pollinated by honeybees. So they are very important to our sustenance. And And honeybees are in the decline, and that's because research is showing because the climate is changing, and with the climate changing, the bees are having to adapt, but also the pests are also adapting, and the pests are having a better job at adapting quickly to these changes. And also all the pesticides that we use on our lawns get into the flowers. And so when the bees are poisoned by the pesticides, they die. And so um, for those two primary reasons, the bees are decreasing in number, but the number of backyard beekeepers is increasing because a lot of people are growing their own food now. And the other hand to that is we need to increase our level of pollinators in our gardens.
Okay, got you. So, how does one, I guess, know the difference from a honeybee or the other 20 type of species that you mentioned? Because people are scared of bees. Some people are, in fact, allergic. So, how would they know the difference?
Yeah, so the bees, for the most part, look different. So, a sweat bee looks different from a carpenter bee or a mason bee or a green bee. Um, the honeybees, they look different. Um, there are different races of bees. So there are European bees or African bees. There are Italian bees, Russian bees. Um, and so there are different kind of categories of bees. But as the bees, like a queen bee will be inseminated by up to 12 drones, and they come from different apiaries or different colonies. And so you're getting a mixture of bees genetically in the colony. So sometimes it's hard to tell, but a honeybee looks different than, say, like a bumblebee. Um, I would say to people, and yeah, people are definitely allergic. And I would say to folks, like when a bee is near you, the important thing is to not to flail around and scream and all that stuff. You have to be calm because the bee is really just you're in their space and they're looking for flowers. They're looking for pollen. They're looking for nectar. And so if you just kind of stay still and stay calm, they'll realize, oh, that's not a flower. There's no nectar here, and they'll move off to another flower. But when folks start flailing and screaming and stuff, the bees are getting agitated, and that's when the bees will sting for the most part.
Okay, got you, got you. So, I know you got into this space and you wanted to write a book. So, did you complete that book that you wanted to write?
I wrote that book and like three other books. So that first book was so when I got into beekeeping, a lot of people were asking me like how is it like they kept asking questions like, I'm just gonna write all of this down. And I was keeping notes the year that I was working with Kaya. And so the book is called Beekeeping Besties because it really is about she and our relationship with each other and with the bees. And so I took notes about how we were doing during the year, what we were thinking about, what we were planning for. And then I also have a section of each page basically has a section of like it's a nonfiction book. So one part is a narrative that kind of is a through line through the book, and the other part is facts about honeybees. Because the more you know about a thing, the less fearful you are about a thing, right? And so if you instead of just being like, oh, bees, bats, snakes, spiders are all scary, the more you know about how important they are and how integral they are to our lives, then you look at them, you might not love them, but you look at them with more of a like, okay, I see you. You're helpful, so I'm not going to be as afraid. So part of the book is helping people to know some facts, and the other part is how we were doing that first year. And it was a year that the murder hornet, it was called like the murder hornet, was out like grabbing bees. And so like we had that experience too. So that's in the book. So all of my notes ended up in that book. And then I wrote another book just about being in nature. And then my last book about bees it's called City Bees. So I live in a rural area and Kaya lives in a urban area. And so we were like, our bees should meet. And so I wrote a book about how like what are the rural bees doing, the country bees doing, and what are the city bees doing? And the city bees go to lots of different locations around Richmond. So it's a historical cultural tour. So they go to Elegba, they go to the library, they go to Hovey Field, they go to VCU, VUU, they go to the African restaurant on Main Street because I want people to also start to learn more about the place that we live
Yeah.
from the vantage point of bees in this case.
Oh, that's nice. That's a dope concept, and I'm glad you were able to do that. So shifting a little bit, pivoting to the honey, can you tell me about the process of extracting the honey? What do you do as far as the process? Then you sell the honey, I'm sure, but can you tell me about all that?
Yeah, yeah. So first of all, like bees have a tongue that they use as a straw and as a pipette, so they can go into the flower. They have a the relationship with certain flowers. Like hummingbirds use certain flowers because of the way their apparatus is built, and bees go to certain other flowers because of the way that they're built. And so the bees can consume the nectar from a flower and they keep it. So bees have two stomachs, so they keep it in their honey stomach. It never touches a digestive stomach. So honey is not like bee vomit. It's just it never touches the digestive system. So the bees take the nectar up, and then they push it like a pipette. They push it or they push it to a bee inside the colony, and then that bee they combine the nectar with enzymes and a little bit of water, and then they pack it into the cell, and then they have to fan the cell because the nectar has to be less than 18% or so moisture. So it's like, so it has that honey consistency. It's not like watery, it has a honey consistency. Um, and then, so then you have a sheet, like a frame of just capped, it's called capped honey because they put a wax cap on it when it's ready for consumption, either by bees or by humans. So you pick up the frame, it has a nice wax cap on the whole frame. Then you take those frames, you put them in your extractor, and you either like hand crank it or you push the button and it spins. This centrifugal force will well, you have to like cut the wax cappings off before you put it in the extractor so the honey can come out. And then the power of the force drives the honey to the sides of the extractor and then down to the bottom. And then it gets filtered into a bucket, and then we then put that into jars. So the bees do a lot of the work to convert nectar to honey, and the process is called invertase. And so they convert it from nectar to honey, and then the beekeepers, when we take it off, we filter the honey out because it might have like little bits of like bee parts in it or little, little something that's dropped into the hive. And so we will filter it so that what gets put in the jar is just that doesn't have any other objects or anything in it. So it's filtered.
This is so educational. I didn't even think it was that easy at all, but because I've seen the videos of people, scraping
Yeah,
and that's it, but I didn't know it was that to the jar.
yeah,
Another step.
yeah,
That's
yeah. It takes a minute.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's,
Is it a seasonal thing or a time period in which you do this, or is it actually all year round? Like one week you might go like every week, or is it just no, I got to do it just this part of the year? How's that?
yeah. Definitely parts of the year. So it really corresponds to the nectar flow. So right now we're in a dearth, which means that even though flowers look like they're blooming, their nectaries, like their ability to produce nectar is very low. And so the bees, we don't want to take any of the honey now because the bees need it to overwinter. So bees are the only insects that produce and consume their own food, and their own food is only honey. There's nothing else a bee makes or eats. Well, they do make like bee bread. They do make some other products for the hive for the baby bees, but they only consume honey. And so we typically will extract honey during the nectar flow, which it's like it's been different in Virginia the last couple of years because the climate has been so wacky. But so now we're in August, so June was a good nectar flow. So a lot of people took some honey then because the bees have time to replenish the honey because we still have some nectar flow going. If we were to extract the honey now, they wouldn't have anything for the winter. Then we have to give them substitute food. You don't really want to give them artificial food, sugar. You want them to use their own natural products. So there are definitely times during the year where we extract honey, and there are other times where we just leave it alone for the bees to use.
So you mentioned something earlier as far as climate change, and it definitely sounds like one of those things because I also heard you mention multiple times about it's a difference with the season and stuff. So for the people who don't necessarily believe in climate change, like how do you convince them or let them know like, hey, this is real? Not just for the bees' sake, but for earthly sake, because the weather and erosion and so many other factors are different today.
Yeah, and you can tell by all the storms we're having and the crazy weather and the heat, and places are getting weather changes that they haven't before. And so it's a whole infrastructure of how do you adapt to have an earlier snow or a hotter summer, right? That all is about like energy and infrastructure. So it's a big issue, not just for like natural things, but it's a big issue just like for the way we live. So for beekeeping, we know that certain flowers typically bloom at certain times, but now we can't really tell because if you remember this winter, well, we can tell, but it's a little trickier. So this winter, it was really cold and then it got really warm and then the bud started to bloom and everyone was like, oh no, it's whatever month it is, like that shouldn't be happening now. But so all the bees went out to get all the honey or get all the nectar, and then it got cold again. And so now they're back in the hive, or they died because there wasn't enough food. And so we can tell there's something else going on with climate change because of one, the temperatures, and two, because of what's blooming when. Um, this year, I think we were ahead of the blooming season by 4 or 5 weeks, and so that means that like the climate, it got warmer faster. It got warmer faster or earlier than it usually gets warm, and so that throws everything off. Um, so climate change. The climate is changing, and we're trying to adapt to the changes. And also, all of the animals and the trees and all that around us are trying to adapt as well.
Got you, got you. So is it true also after the male bee plants his
Yes.
seed, he dies? Is that true?
Yes. Yeah, he
Okay.
does. And another fun fact is that the male bees or the drones, so all bees have pheromones. It's a scent hormone. And so um we know that the female bees, the workers, do all the work. We know the queen is laying all the eggs. And the drones really don't do too much. They do have pheromones, so they kind of keep the colony in balance. But in the winter or when it starts to get cold, the drones, they don't forage for food, they don't protect the queen, they don't clean the hive, they don't really do any of the tasks that is needed for survival. And they take up space and heat and food. And so when it gets cold outside, the bees will kick the drones out of the hive. They'll like pick them up and like drop them outside in the cold and they'll just die because the bees are trying to survive. Their whole point is like the colony survives. And if you have, I don't know, 2,000 extra bees in there that aren't contributing but are using the resources, like that's not going to work. So they kick them out. So not only do they die after their sperm is then released into the queen, they also die when the workers get rid of them in the winter because they just take up space.
Yeah, nature is funny. Just the hierarchy of it all and just how the process of it. I mean, it sounds interesting, it sounds amazing, and you got to think like it's restorative, because they got their own process. So before I let you get up out of here, how can people get involved if they want to assist you and or any other bee organization? Because this is a vital part of, I guess, our civilization. If they do go extinct,
Yeah,
we'll be in trouble. So how can
we'll
people?
be in trouble. Yeah. So there are a lot of bee clubs around Central Virginia. There are two in Richmond. There's one in Chesterfield. So I'm in the one in Chesterfield. There's one in Powhatan, out that way. There are many. And so I would say get into one of the clubs. You could just find them online, get a mentor. This is not the kind of hobby that you can just go and like do and think it's going to be okay because you're actually being a steward of a natural living thing. And I think that's a heavy responsibility. So I don't want to see people just making mistakes unnecessarily, like making mistakes, yes, but making mistakes unnecessarily because you are, and you could I've seen it many times. You are in effect killing 60,000 beings that are responsible for food, right? And so you have to have a mentor to work through some of the things you see because there's a lot of math, there's a lot of science involved in beekeeping. So find a bee club, get a mentor. I also have a Black beekeeper organization because I wanted us, we know that beekeeping has roots in ancient civilizations. And I was especially interested in Kemet, which is ancient Egypt. And so, like, we have culturally, we know how to do this. Like, this is part of our cultural history. I have friends in Africa who are beekeeping right now. So, it is part of our cultural DNA. But yet, we have lost it. There are less than 2% of the beekeepers are folks of color and only 36% I think are women, right? So I'm trying to get more younger, more women, and more Black and brown folks, or more BIPOC folks into beekeeping. So I have a Black beekeeper group. Although it's not just for Black beekeepers because we couldn't really figure out like the best name for things, but I really am trying to support people to learn more about beekeeping. So and I would love any kind of help, like come out to do an apiary visit, come to any of my workshop. I'm giving one at I think Fairfield Library soon. So the best way to reach me is to go. So I'm on all the social medias, so we can all of that. Holly Freeman and you see my name in the thing, two L's, two E's. But also you can go to my website, which is hollyfreeman.com. And I have a newsletter that I send out. There are videos on there. You can reach out to me if you want a workshop, if you want to come on a visit, if you want to pick up a book, if you want to see the film, like whatever. So that's probably the best way is to go to the website, which is hollyfreeman.com.
Got you, got you. Any last tips that you want to leave with the people?
I would say that so I took a group of VSU students to a Commonwealth Apiary tour last weekend to culminate our 6-month class around bees and beekeeping. So I had youngsters, like college students and older, like adults, older adults, on this apiary tour. And at one point, we were all standing in the middle of a farm in Earlysville, a apiary in Earlysville, Virginia, like in the mountains somewhere. And one of the students was like, "I'm standing in the middle of bees, and I'm not even scared." And I was thought that was just so important. It's like the more you learn about something that you thought was scary, the less scary it becomes. And so I want to say that to people, like just in life, right? Like if you're afraid of, like, there are fears that are just, it's a fear, and like that's a fear. But I think there are a lot of fears because people are not equipped with the information they need to really process that thing that they're afraid of. So I would say just in life, um, just think about that. And I also say like get yourself to a beet, eat local honey because that deals with lots of allergies and it's medicinal, it's healthy, it's a lower glycemic index than sugar. So I would say like learn about things you're afraid of so that you could perhaps be less afraid. Get local honey from your beekeeper, your local beekeeper. Um, and I would say to spend time in nature. Beekeepers have the longest lifespan of any career because I think because like we got to be chill and calm, and also beekeeping is very therapeutic. It lowers your heart rate, like all that stuff. So get out in nature, walk among the trees, take off your shoes, take a breath, all of that because the world is so hectic, and I think we need now to have an even closer relationship with nature. So I would say get outside.
Hey, Dr. Holly, I appreciate you
Thank you, James.
sharing your knowledge. It was very informative, and hopefully people can get out and support, or if they're just inclined based on the knowledge aspect of it. So I definitely appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you for hanging in there with me.